It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, my wedding. But all I could see was my parents standing alone. No one talking to them. No one even noticing they were there. While his family, they were everywhere. Running the show. Making decisions. Acting like it was their wedding, not mine. I kept smiling for the photos. Pretending everything was fine. Until I saw my mom, trying not to cry. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just awkward. It was disrespect. And I had stayed quiet long enough. So while everyone was celebrating, I walked straight to the stage, picked up the mic, and said what no one was ready to hear. Planning my wedding was supposed to be one of the happiest times of my life. At least, that's what I always imagined. It was supposed to be about me and him building something together, making choices that felt like us. But somewhere along the way, that changed. His family got involved. At first, it felt normal. Helpful even. They had experience, opinions, ideas. And I didn't mind listening. But slowly, listening turned into agreeing. And agreeing turned into losing control. Decisions stopped feeling like mine. The venue changed. The decorations changed. Even the guest list started growing with people I barely knew. And every time I hesitated, someone would say, "Trust us, it'll be better this way." So I let it go. Because I didn't want conflict. Not before the wedding. Not with the people who were about to become my family. But the more I stepped back, the more space they took. And without realizing it, my parents started fading into the background. They weren't part of the planning anymore. No one asked for their opinion. No one included them in decisions. And I told myself it was temporary. That once the wedding day came, everything would feel balanced again. That both families would come together. That it would finally feel like my wedding. But standing there that day, watching everything unfold, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't my wedding anymore. And my parents? They weren't just uninvolved. They were being quietly pushed aside, right in front of me. And I had let it happen. The ceremony went by exactly how everyone expected. Perfect lighting, perfect timing, perfect smiles. From the outside, it looked like a dream. But I wasn't inside that moment. Not really. Because every time I looked away from the camera, my eyes went straight to my parents, standing off to the side, not seated in the front where they belonged, not being greeted, not even acknowledged, like they were just extra guests at someone else's wedding. And the worst part? No one seemed to notice. Or maybe they did and chose not to care. At one point, I saw my dad step forward to help one of the coordinators. Just a small gesture. The kind of thing he's always done. But before he could even finish speaking, someone from my husband's family cut him off. "We've got it handled." Polite words. Cold tone. Clear message. Step back. I watched him nod slightly. And move away. Like it didn't matter. Like he didn't matter. And that's when something inside me started to break. Because I knew that look. The one where he pretends he's fine. Just to keep the peace. My mom wasn't any different. She kept smiling. Talking to people who barely engaged. Trying to act like she belonged there. But I could see it. The way her smile faded when no one was looking. The way she kept glancing at me. Like she didn't want me to notice. Like she didn't want to ruin my day. And that's what made it worse. Because they were protecting me. While being disrespected. At my own wedding. I turned to my husband a few times. Waiting for him to say something. To notice. To step in. But he didn't. He was caught up in everything else. Or maybe he didn't see it the way I did. Either way, nothing changed. And the more it happened, the more it felt intentional. Not just poor planning. Not just miscommunication. But a quiet decision. To put one family above the other. To let mine fade into the background. And I stood there, smiling for pictures. Playing my part. While something inside me kept asking the same question. How did it get this far? And why didn't I stop it? Because at that point, it wasn't just uncomfortable. It was betrayal. Not loud. Not obvious. But clear enough. And I knew, if I stayed quiet any longer, it would stay that way. I tried to tell myself it wasn't a big deal. That I was overthinking it. That weddings are messy, emotional, imperfect. But every moment made it harder to believe that. Because nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. The reception started, and once again, his family took over. They directed the seating. They organized the schedule. They even adjusted the order of speeches without asking me. Like I wasn't the bride. Like I was just part of the background. And my parents? Still on the outside. Still watching. Still trying not to make it obvious. At one point, I saw my mom sitting alone at a table meant for guests. Not family. Guests. That's when it stopped feeling like a mistake. And started feeling like a choice. I felt my chest tighten. Because this wasn't something I could ignore anymore. Not after everything they had done for me. Not on a day that was supposed to include them. Speeches began. One after another. His family went first. Laughing. Telling stories. Sharing memories. And not once did anyone mention my parents. Not even a simple acknowledgement. Nothing. I looked at my dad again. He was clapping. Smiling. Like everything was fine. And that's when something inside me shifted. Because I realized something. If I stayed quiet, this would be the story of my wedding. That my parents were there. But didn't matter. That they were present. But invisible. And I couldn't let that happen. I glanced at my husband one more time. Waiting. Hoping. But he didn't notice. Or didn't act. And that was the moment everything became clear. No one was going to fix this. No one was going to step in. Except me. My hands felt cold. My heart beat louder than the music. But my mind was suddenly calm. Because I knew what I had to do. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. The sound barely noticeable, but final. I didn't say anything. I just started walking. Toward the stage. Toward the mic. Every step felt heavier. But more certain. Because this wasn't about creating a scene. It was about correcting one. And by the time I reached the stage, there was no hesitation left. Only one thought. It ends now. I reached for the mic, and the moment my fingers wrapped around it, the room started to quiet down. It wasn't planned. Which is exactly why everyone noticed. Music faded. Conversations stopped. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, confused, curious. I took a slow breath. My heart was racing, but my voice? Steady. I just need a minute, I said. The room went completely silent. Because there's something I've been watching all day, and I can't ignore it anymore. A few people shifted in their seats. The energy changed instantly. Today is supposed to be about family, I continued. Both families. I paused, letting that settle. But that's not what's been happening. Now the silence felt heavier. Uncomfortable. Real. I turned slightly, looking toward my parents. My mom and dad are here. My voice softened for a second. And they've been standing on the sidelines this entire time. People started glancing around. Finally noticing. No one welcomed them. No one included them. Not once. A ripple moved through the crowd. Whispers. Tension. I looked back at the room. And I let it happen. That part hit me as much as anyone. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to ruin the day. I paused again, then shook my head slightly. But staying quiet is exactly how this kind of thing continues. Now I looked directly at his family. Not angry, just clear. This is my wedding. Every word slow. Firm. Not something to take over. Not something to control. The room froze. And my parents? I gestured toward them again. They're not guests. My voice tightened just slightly. They're the reason I'm standing here today. No one moved. No one interrupted. Because there was nothing to argue with. It was already true. They deserve respect. The same respect everyone else here expects for their own family. The silence now wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Meaningful. I took one final breath. So before anything else continues, I looked around the room one last time. That needed to be said. I lowered the mic slowly. And for the first time that day, no one was smiling. They were thinking. Because the moment had shifted. And there was no going back to pretending anymore. For a second, no one moved. The entire room just sat there, frozen in that moment. Like everything had paused. Then slowly, the shift began. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. People started turning their heads. Looking toward my parents. Really looking this time. Not just glancing, but noticing. And once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. One of the guests stood up first. walked over to my parents, spoke to them. Then another followed. And another. Small steps. But each one changed the room. Because now the silence wasn't covering anything. It was correcting it. I watched as my mom's expression shifted. From surprise to something softer. Relief. My dad straightened slightly. Like he wasn't invisible anymore. Like he was finally being seen. And that moment? That was the real turning point. Not the speech. Not the words. But what happened after. Because words only matter if something changes. I glanced toward my husband. He was looking at me now, differently. Not confused. Not defensive. Just aware. Like he finally understood what I had been seeing all day. What I had been feeling. And without saying anything, he stepped away from where he was standing and walked toward my parents. That part mattered. More than anything else. Because it meant this wasn't just my moment anymore. It was ours. And as he stood there with them, talking, listening, the distance that had been there all day started to close. Not perfectly. Not instantly. But enough. Enough to change the direction of everything. I looked around the room again. The energy was different now. Quieter, but stronger. More honest. Because the truth had been said out loud. And once that happens, everything else has to adjust. And for the first time that entire day, it actually felt like my wedding. I set the mic down gently, my hands finally steady. The room didn't go back to how it was before. And honestly, it shouldn't have. Because something real had happened. Not perfect. Not polished. But honest. I stepped down from the stage slowly, my heart still beating fast, but lighter now. As I walked across the room, people looked at me differently. Not awkward. Not judgmental. Respectful. Like they understood why I had to say it. I reached my parents first. My mom's eyes were still a little watery, but she was smiling. A real smile this time. My dad just nodded slightly, the way he always does when words aren't needed. And that was enough. More than enough. I turned and saw my husband standing nearby. Not distant anymore. Not unaware. Present. He didn't say much, just took a step closer. And in that moment, I knew something had shifted between us two. Because this wasn't just about one speech. It was about boundaries. About respect. About what we were going to allow and what we weren't. From that point on, the wedding felt different. Not louder, not bigger. Just real. People talked. Connected. And for the first time all day, both families felt like they were actually part of it. Together. I looked around one last time, taking it all in. Because I realized something important. The day didn't go the way I planned. But it went the way it needed to. Because sometimes, the most important moments aren't the ones you rehearse. They're the ones where you finally speak up. And change everything.